This Week in Startups is brought to you by LinkedIn. A business is only as strong as its people, and every hire matters. Go to linkedin.com/twist and get a $50 credit towards your first job post. Capterra, the leading free online resource to find the best software solutions. Visit capterra.com/twist for free today to find the right tools to make 2020 the year for your business. And Help Scout, the customer service platform built for starting and scaling up. Eligible startups get Help Scout for only $50 a month for their first 12 months. Visit helpscout.com/twist to learn more.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis, and I am on fire right now. Listen, working hard is how you win. There's a bunch of dipshits on the Twitter at this very moment telling you to have balance in your life and that's what's important if you're running a company. Wrong. That balance in life is important. If you're running in a company, it is an Olympic caliber sport. It's going to be really effing hard. And a bunch of rich people who are pulling the ladder up behind you and giving you terrible advice, telling you need balance in your life, are doing you a huge disservice. I am not going to lie to you. I never have in over 1,000 episodes of this podcast, which is why you stop me when I'm in line on the ski lift or at Starbucks or wasting $7 at Phil's getting that mojito thing. It's freaking delicious. You need to work hard. There's a direct correlation between hard work and success in this world. Look at Draymond Green. $100 million contract drafted in the second round. And he's killing it. And everybody wants him to come to their team because he works hard. My next guest has been working tirelessly on Zumper, ZUMPER.com. If you're a young person getting an apartment, you know what it is. If you're an old person who owns a home, you probably don't because you're not renting anymore. His name is Anthemos Georgiades.
That's great.
How does your mom pronounce it?
So Greek father, British accent because of the British mother. Georgiades or Georgiades, which is a little harder.
Georgiades.
Yes, that's perfect.
Anthemos Georgiades. I'll say Georgiades because with the G is kind of...
That's right.
Yeah, Georgiades. And you founded Zumper back in 2009.
2012, actually.
2012.
2012.
Oh, sorry. My researcher got it wrong in the notes. I thought it was 2012 because you were at TechCrunch Disrupt, right? You launched it there.
That's right. Somehow we came runner-up in like the Battlefield competition when we really had nothing at the time. It was the one that, Your Mechanic one, if you remember those guys.
I remember. I almost invested in Your Mechanic. Yeah. I looked at that. I thought, this is a pretty good idea. Having the mechanic come to your driveway. Yep. Is a great idea. Do you know what happened to that company?
I think it's still going. I think they shifted some of the founders into new roles and they have a new management team. Still going. OGs, I think 7 years in. I think we're the two from the class.
If you look at Tesla, they are doing, I think Elon said they can do like 80% of their repairs or whatever in the field. So the last 3 or 4 times I've had to have something done, let's say the last 4 times I had to do something done with my Teslas. I think half of the time was just done in my driveway, which is a huge unlock when you think about it. Like to just,
and they're doing that in-house, right? They're not contracting that out, or they're doing it like Tesla owns.
Tesla does it themselves.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think the idea behind Tesla is eventually going to be, because I think they're doing collision now. In the early days, because I had some of the first ones, and I got a couple of dents here and there. I was like, Elon, how do we get these fixed? He's like, yeah, I'm trying to find somebody who will do it for us. Like, here's a body shop, here's a body shop, but it's made out of carbon fiber, so a lot of the stuff is hard. And I was like, why don't you just put the stuff on a shelf, and I can just go to the Tesla factory and just take one of the panels. So yeah, that's where we're going. And that's actually I think what they're going to do is just swap them in or out. So you went to HBS, couldn't get into Stanford. That's my standard joke. And then was this your first company coming out of Harvard Business School?
Yeah, it's my first company. Never thought I wanted to be a CEO, just as so many of your guests just like had a problem I wanted to solve that sucked in my life, and just that's the path you take, and now I'm done.
And you were a business consultant? Were you at Boston or something?
I was a BCG, yeah. And it was I know, give me heat.
How long did you do that for, 18 months?
I survived 30 months.
30 months?
2.5 years.
It's double what I would expect.
Well, you open with work ethic, and it's kind of crazy that you spend your 20s working. I mean, I really did work 21 hours a day for 2.5 years.
When you were at Boston Consulting Group?
Yeah. And you're working...
BCG, is their idea to haze people to do that? Because it seems unnecessary to work to that level as these management consultants do. So why do they do that?
Yeah, it's an amazing job. I think these jobs are so client focused that they will do whatever the client needs. And so when you're up at 4 a.m. at BCG or Bain or McKinsey, you're not doing the model, you're editing a slide with an appendix and a footnote that no one's going to read. But they don't say no to the final percent, but that final percent takes the entire evening. So it teaches you a good work ethic, but it also teaches you like A, how to be 80-20, and B, like do something you love. Like you've got to do something you love if you work 21 hours a day. And to your Draymond point with how you opened, like I think it's easy to work all day long if you just do a job that you feel passionate about, where people appreciate you. Yeah. And like sometimes in consulting, not the vibe.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're Draymond Green and you work really hard, or you're working and you're playing basketball and you love the game, you like competing, it's not work. Yep. And that's the thing that these people are losing about when they give this stupid fakaka advice that you shouldn't work hard. It's like, well, if you love it, then what am I going to do? Stop doing what I love after 8 hours and then say, oh, because somebody who's literally worth $100 million on Twitter told me I need balance, that's what's important, then I need to stop work at 8 o'clock? Sometimes the best work gets done between the 8th and the 12th hour. Yep. Sometimes that's when the magic happens, is when you're grinding.
Yeah, we were saying this before we started. Like Zumper, my favorite time is when we had 12 people, when we used to come to our all-hands meeting, because there was just no depth. Everyone was uniquely accountable for what we did every week. And when you showed up to a Monday morning meeting, and we still do the same all-hands meeting every Monday, 12:30, we show every number in the business since day one. But back when we had 12 people, every person was uniquely accountable for a piece of the business. We have 200 people now. Love my team. We're a much more like realistic, successful company now. And yet, how do you drive accountability when you have 200 people? How can you convince number 201 that she uniquely matters? Because she does, but it's really easy to just blend in.
On a percentage basis, it's a hard story to get apart, because if you're 1 out of 10, you're 10% of the team. If you're 1 out of 100, you're 1%.
Yep.
And it is hard to find that meaning in it. Tell everybody what the origin story is of Zumper. Why did you start it?
So Zumper was founded out of pure frustration with apartment renting in my 20s. I grew up in London, moved to New York with BCG, moved to Boston for grad school. I think I moved 7 times in my 20s, and each time I thought search was okay. You can use Craigslist or Zillow or whatever to search for apartments, but I always found that actually when you found something you wanted, you were jettisoned into email ping pong with a property manager or a landlord or a broker. Why was there no e-commerce transaction for apartment rentals? Why is there no book button like there is in Airbnb and short-term rentals for a long-term lease? And so Zumper's founding mission was make renting an apartment as easy as booking a hotel. And that is what we're squarely focused on.
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about what Elon did with Teslas, the ability to just go online and order one and to put $500 and put a deposit, like literally the Ford Motor Company is in year, like, how old is it? It's 100 and what years old? And they still can't let you go online and order a product. I mean, this is why these companies are effed for all eternity, because their whole franchise model is so disgusting and horrific and anti-consumer. Yep. But are you able to run this in New York and places like that where it's a completely crooked, corrupt system where brokers, and I think this may have changed in the last couple of weeks, but where brokers are basically pitting people against each other, and then they tell you got to put 2 months down, but then at the last minute they say 3 months and they skim the 3rd month, and they high pressure tactics?
That is exactly the problem we're fixing. When I moved to New York, I could not believe you're going to spend 1/3 of your income on your rent. Even in New York, you're probably going to spend more than 1/3 of your income on your rent.
Yeah.
Biggest transaction you make every year as a renter. 110 million people in the US rent. They spend 1/3 of their income on their rent. In New York, it's even more. And they're being kind of duped at the final step. That is exactly the transparency we wanted to bring.
Every time.
So in New York, for example, we work directly with landlords when we and we do it 2 ways. We either have kind of full serve or soft serve. Self-serve. Yeah. Some landlords want you to go do the photography and stuff. So we can send people in, we can put a lockbox or actually do a tour ourselves. More than happy to do that. Some landlords just want to self-serve. They just want to use our software, a bit like how they used to use Airbnb host software to manage their business, collect their rent. Zumper does that for a landlord. And so we offer landlords the ability to kind of do everything themselves or to get a bit of help to close stuff. But it was all ideally pointed to the renter, where the renter will feel like this is an e-commerce transaction, not just a random piece of paperwork that goes into a pile.
Which city did you start with and why? Because this is a regional play.
Yep.
And each city is uniquely different in terms of their regulation / corruption / how the landlords behave.
So I was in between my 2 years at HBS, I came to San Francisco where I met my co-founder, Taylor. And we started in San Francisco, which is a really, we'll probably get into this, warped real estate city, and the dynamics are bizarre, but the fundamentals...
You can take the words real estate out of that statement too. It's just a warped city.
It is. We live in remarkable times in San Francisco.
Yeah.
It is changing very quickly. And real estate here is unique, very strange. 60% of stuff's rent controlled. There's some weird ordinances, but the fundamentals are still here. That landlords need vacancies filled, and they're very worried about like renters and their quality. And so in San Francisco, we actually just tested: would renters in 2012 make offers on apartments on an online board? Would they just publicly make offers, and the landlord could then choose between risk and reward, between kind of how creditworthy they were and what the price was? And we showed overwhelmingly landlords would do that. And so I think that was the fundamentals of this industry will look more like Airbnb in 5 years.
MVP?
That was the MVP. That was
you just said, put it up there and just go ahead and make a bid.
Oh man, it was so ugly as well. It was like just green website, like green back pages. For some reason, we had everything green. I don't know why.
It's the worst color scheme you could ever think of.
Oh, it was so
terrible
bad.
On the web.
Awful. And you said the UI was
What's green on the web? Tell me what's a website that's green on the web?
So one of our competitors was green, was Trulia, but I think they've been
Trulia is a little green.
Trulia is a little green.
Splash of green.
Why is that? So purple's untrustworthy. I'm trying to think. Green. Glassdoor is green. There you go. Glassdoor went heavy on green.
Yeah, it's terrible. Nextdoor has a little green.
Nextdoor has a lot of green.
Yeah. Like if you're doing a website about trail running, go ahead and green, but everything else is blue.
Yeah, we ended up blue and magenta.
Of course.
So we used a really horrible MVP, and I remember at TechCrunch Disrupt we pitched it, and I remember the editors at TechCrunch just before we were going on stage, we ended up dumbing down what we pitched, because we basically pitched this offer board where it was not an auction at all. We did not want to elevate prices. We just wanted everyone to have full transparency that if someone had been to that apartment the night before and made an offer, you knew what it was. Right. The problem was, to the outside, it could be misconstrued as an auction. And I remember, I think it was Alex here at TechCrunch kind of nearly vomited on us when we pitched it before we went on stage, because she was like, this is pretty controversial. And it was like actually very good feedback in retrospect, that what we proved was that everyone wanted to be transactional online, but we hadn't quite nailed the mechanism in which people did it.
Yeah, whenever you get into an auction or asking people what they think it's going to be, it just slows things down.
Yep.
And it creates paralysis, doesn't it?
Yep.
Because now you see 4 different prices and you're like, okay, am I overpaying, underpaying?
Yep.
This is why like even TrueCar, which I liked, and I'm friends with Scott Painter, I thought it was a brilliant idea in one way, but it also increases your anxiety. Because you're like, oh my God, there's different prices for cars. Am I paying the right price? And now you're getting into this optimization as opposed to closing.
Yep, that's it. And sometimes with transparency, you can engender the wrong behavior, because if you say to a renter, this is not an auction, but you're showing open prices, of course they're going to think it's an auction and they're going to bid up. And so we ended up doing something that was the very opposite of what we were trying to achieve, but we learned something from it. So then we scrapped that, literally built a search platform for 4 years. So the first 4 years of Zumper had nothing to do with transactional tools. We built what is now the largest private company in our space, will be used by kind of 85 million Americans this year to just search for apartments. And now a subset of our listings are transactional, meaning you can kind of pre-qual and book them. And our job in the next few years is just make a subset of our transactions the majority of our platform.
I want to understand, when you're creating a marketplace like this, how you think about, when we get back from this quick break, when you focus on just building up the liquidity in the market, the number of listings, the number of brokers, the number of renters, because you have this two-sided marketplace, and maybe even 3 with the brokers. I'm interested in how they play a role in here. And then when you decide to monetize, when we get back on This Week in Startups. Hiring great people is the way to grow your business. You know this. But how do you do that and run your business at the same time? Hiring is a huge time suck. It's the biggest time suck. We all know that. I have a perfect solution for you to get talent right now. It's called LinkedIn Jobs, and it makes it simple and easy. They screen candidates with all the hard and soft skills that you need so you can hire the right person right now. LinkedIn looks beyond the work skills. No, it's not just that. They also put your job in front of qualified candidates who match your business requirements perfectly. Things like collaboration, creativity, and adaptability. That's how LinkedIn make sure your job post is seen by the people you want to hire, people with the skills, qualifications, and other interests that will help your business grow. And it's no wonder a person is hired every 8 seconds with LinkedIn. Here's an example, Takeoffs.io, one of my portfolio companies that we found when we were in Sydney and they moved to the United States. They are an AI-enabled building materials marketplace. So if you're building something, they use AI to say, hey, here's how much wood, here's how many bricks you need. You get the idea. Well, they were looking for an AI engineering lead, which is a tough role to hire for because they required a very unique skill set. They used LinkedIn Talent Solutions to find a qualified candidate. In fact, somebody with a PhD in computer vision, so they could look at these floor plans and figure out what you need in terms of materials. You get the idea. Well, that person has now been with them for over a year, and they've rolled out several major projects, and they're really been a game changer for Takeoffs.io. Examples like this are why companies rated LinkedIn Jobs the #1 hiring platform for delivering quality hires. So here is your call to action. Find the right person for your business today with LinkedIn Jobs. You can pay what you want, and you'll get the first $50, $50, for free. Just visit linkedin.com/twist. Again, that's linkedin.com/TWIST and get $50 off your first job post. Terms and conditions do apply because they're giving you a 50. All right, let's get back to this amazing episode. All right, welcome back to This Week in Startups. I got Anthemos, the CEO and co-founder of Zumper, ZUMPER.com. When we left our hero after starting this company in 2012, I was wondering, a lot of people would do marketplaces. A lot of people say, hey, listen, you got to have the fees baked in, like Uber did, or Airbnb. Another group of people say, hey, don't worry about that. Just get to critical mass and then later on turn on the transaction fees, and then take your VIG, your take rate. How did you do it with Zumper? And what's your philosophy on this?
So it was a great question. We were strongly the latter. So if you think about apartment rentals, if you don't feel like you see everything as a consumer, you're going to bounce. Like, you're going to spend a third of your income on this transaction. If you go to a website that has 20% of the listings, you're going to look and you're going to know it immediately. And so supply side liquidity is absolutely king in our industry. Kleiner did our Series A in 2014. So 5 years ago, we did our Series A and we had no traffic. We had 30,000 users a month, but we had accumulated basically every single listing in San Francisco and New York. Then we had more listings than anyone else. Oh. And we did our Series A entirely on that premise, Jason, of supply side liquidity is king. Don't ever create a barrier to it in the early days. Give it away for free. Build tools for those supply side listing landlords to manage their business on Zumper, even before Zumper had a single MAU. And then over time, start to inch into the monetization. So we were strongly the latter, and I really believe that marketplaces get to liquidity first, typically.
How did you get the information that was on Craigslist, large part, onto your platform? Is it legal to just copy it? Or did they try to stop you? Or did you have people in Manila or India just scraping the web and trying to normalize data and contacting people? How did you get those first 10,000 listings or whatever it was?
Yeah, so just as we were launching, Craigslist were going after a bunch of competitors in our space, so we didn't touch Craigslist. We had to do it the hard way. We knew even if you crawled Craigslist, which we didn't, we knew that one day you'd have to build bottom up your own business. So we could have cut the middleman and just went to building it bottom up. The biggest hack we had was building landlord tools. So ways for landlords to create a listing on their phone, syndicate it to all the main sites, and then bring the leads back and do
What did you call
screening.
that tool?
It was Zumper Pro.
Zumper Pro.
And it was the single most successful product we built in the first 2 years, even though no consumers know about it.
Yeah. So this is the phrase, I don't know who came up with it, which is come for the tool, stay for the marketplace.
That's it.
So you heard that at that time?
I wish I'd heard that. I think we just made it up as we went.
Right.
We basically just understood that we needed a reason for landlords to have listings on our platform, even though we had no MAUs to show them. And so we used to syndicate to Zillow, to Trulia, to Hotpads, all these platforms that could bring all the demand until the day where we got big enough.
And then you're deprecated the tool, or?
A tool exists. We just didn't need to syndicate it out. So right now, Zumper landlords can get onto Zumper, PadMapper, this company we acquired, and also Facebook Marketplace, where we power a decent chunk of Facebook Marketplace's rental vertical.
Oh, really? Is that a specific deal with Facebook that you did?
Yeah, we did. So we were one of their 2 launch partners, and I think they were looking for listing liquidity on their rental vertical. And so we pumped a bunch of listings there, and they send the leads straight into our landlords.
How does one negotiate with an 800 million pound gorilla like Facebook? They just tell you, this is what we want, and you say, yes, sir? Or do you actually come in and say, pay us? Or do they say, you have a chance to do this, pay us?
So they were. So we had 2 good ins to them. One was Jim Breyer, who sat on their board for a while, exactly, and then of Breyer Capital, who invested in Zumper, gave us an intro. So we had a good in. The people we dealt with at Facebook were, I think, very humble. They knew that they had the ridiculously bazillion pound gorilla, but that they didn't have listing liquidity. And so actually really was, when you dealt with marketplace, like dealing with another startup. And there's no economic arrangement. We send listings, they send leads. It's kind of like a win-win.
Is there some fear that you give them the listings and then they study you, like Google has done to many partners?
Yep.
Google studied Yelp. Google went down the road to buy Yelp. Then Google double-crossed Yelp and just took their listings. When you go into a business relationship with that, how do you protect against something like that? Because now you've let, this giant company study how you do what you do. Do you have that fear? Or that someday they're going to go, which is what they did to all their publishing partners. They're like, bill pages.
Yep.
And then they were like, yeah, okay, now you've spent $1 to get, we did it. We spent $1 to get Mahalo guitar playing to get followers. So I was like, we'll spend $25,000 to get 20,000 followers. Like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Like 5,000 views per video. This is great. And then they were like, yeah, now you're getting 300 views per video and you have to pay to reach everybody. And I was like, I told Cheryl and some other folks there, I was like, why would anybody do business with your company if you pull the rug out like this? Do you have a fear like that with them?
So
how do you protect against that?
Yeah, so any marketplace has to be cognizant, whether it's Facebook, Google, or anyone else. It would be delusional to think that in the long term they're not going to be a competitor. I think the best way is to diversify your income stream. So, for example, Zumper now makes more money from transactional revenue than from lead gen revenue. And so actually it aligns us pretty well with these marketplaces that we're actually fine for them to make lead gen revenue because over time we're much more interested in the deep transactional tools that these companies are never going to build because they're very specific to our marketplace.
What are the deep ones? You mean like charging people's rent through the system?
Exactly. So Zumper, for example, you can now find an apartment on Zumper, pre-qualify using TransUnion. So we'll run your credit, criminal, and eviction. That qualifies you for apartments. You can leave a deposit, close your lease through Zumper, and then pay rent through our rails directly to your landlords. And so whereas some of these companies might get into the first one, which is, hey, build a search engine and monetize through leads, it's highly unlikely they're going to ever get into the bottom tools because they're very specific to our industry. And so actually, I think the best advice is actually align yourself with the 1,000-pound gorilla, where it's kind of a win-win, where actually if Facebook or Google win in this space, it might come at the expense of our direct competitors while we're off figuring out the transaction.
Because you have such a deep integration.
That's the play.
Yeah.
And then never...
And you take a percentage of the rent or just pay a fee?
Yeah, so landlords either pay us for leads, which is the classic marketing of like, hey, every lead we send you, we'll charge you $10. But most landlords pay us as a slice of the transaction. So we disintermediate.
What do you charge them for rent? Because rent's a big number.
So rent's a big number. So if we do lots of work for them, we might charge them several weeks of rent as a commission. If it's straight software, we'll charge them maybe like 1% to 2% of their annual rent roll. So it's still like a good take, but and we're creating a $50,000 lease.
Yeah, if it's a $4,000 a month apartment, it's $50,000. Taking 1% is still $500.
Correct.
But $500 to not have to worry about collecting rent is nothing. To have it automated and clean?
Yep. And
small
then
price to pay.
And imagine what you can add in. So we haven't announced any of this stuff yet, but think about like Airbnb success. And, I think the biggest thing they ever offered was that insurance product where the first apartment got trashed and the next week they came out very quickly and said, right, we'll guarantee you up to $1 million that your apartment won't get trashed. I'll bet
people are like marketing to meth heads. Like, please trash my apartment. I need to redo it.
Exactly. And I'll bet that they've probably paid that out like 5 times ever. But what an amazing underpinning of a marketplace with a financial instrument. There are similar things in long-term apartment rentals you can do, like insure the lease, insure the apartment, ensure that the tenant won't skip. So I think Zumper is very interested in underpinning the marketplace with financial tools. And I think you're seeing a lot of marketplaces do similar things.
I think that's the big unlock. It's like, okay, transactional fees or whatever, and getting the lead gen. But then if you're so integrated into the business that a person can run their business through you.
That's it.
It's so delightful.
That's it.
We were investors in a company called Cozy.
Oh, yeah.
10 years ago.
Those guys.
Gino
love Gino.
They wound up selling. Gino had a kidney transplant, and thank God he's okay. But yeah, it was a crazy story. But they did something similar. They started without the marketplace. They just did those tools. You ran into them in the market, or
love Gino. So Gino's a friend of mine. Oh, so I would have bet on him all day long if I knew him. They sold a CoStar for, I think it was disclosed, but anyway, they sold CoStar for tens of millions of dollars last year.
Yeah,
and that's right. They built a SaaS tool that I think one day was going to build its own marketplace, but ended up becoming so successful as a SaaS tool that a marketplace picked it up to try and wedge it into the $22 billion company.
Yeah.
So correct. So I think you've seen a lot of companies go after it. I think the real power is if you own the marketplace and you own the tools, I think you have an unfair advantage.
Yeah. At the end of the show, I'll tell you my my Airbnb having a party being thrown in it. I have an Airbnb.
How much did you claim on insurance?
I'll tell you at the end of the show when we get back. What I want to know about, too, is this trend of people, when we get back from this quick break, the trend of people living together, young millennials not buying, home ownership going down. I think we're in the low 60s right now or something in that range. It's historically,
62%,
it's historically been right around that number. It peaked at 70%, I believe, during the financial crisis, or which caused the financial crisis. So I want to know when we get back, what is the actual number of who should own in your mind? 70 broke the market, 60 might be too little. Where you think that is, and then how young millennials and people think about owning versus renting and living together, as well as this wacky we live in these communal spaces and the impact they're having on the market when we get back on This Week in Startups. Oh my God, you got to find better software. You got to find software that solves this problem, but you got a lot of things on your plate. Just like trying to find a great restaurant. Would you just walk the streets randomly and pick a restaurant? No. Take out some Yelp or Zagat. You'd have some directory with reviews, right? Well, what if you could have that for software? Well, you do have that. It's there today with 700 specific categories of software and over 1 million reviews. It's called Capterra. That's CAPTERRA.com/twist. It's free, and it's going to allow you to pick the right software for the problem you have at work today. Here at launch, we were looking for new sales automation software. This is critically important for us to have sales automation. And with Capterra, we searched through all the reviews. We set a bunch of filters, i.e. the number of employees we have at our company. And we created this great side-by-side comparison of all the different sales automation tools out there. And I did this for a bunch of our startup companies in our accelerator. We like this one called Pipedrive. Somebody on the team found it on Capterra and said, wait a second, let's try this. And it turned out it was the right tool for the right job. And we've got a small boutique sales team, and they love it. It's the right size product for them. Other folks might want something more industrial strength, something with an API. Well, that's there too. And that's why Capterra is the greatest service for finding the software you need right now. And you're probably just doing what you've always known. How do you know you're using the right software? How do you know you're not getting ripped off and this thing's crazy expensive and there's a better solution at a better price out there? Well, Capterra is going to do that for you. Thanks again to Capterra for supporting This Week in Startups. I want you to go there right now. I want you to thank them on Twitter. I want you to support our great partners because they are supporting this podcast over 1,000 episodes. We couldn't have done it without them. Capterra, CAPTERRA.com/twist. CAPTERRA.com/twist. Get those tools that you can use and make more informed decisions. All right, let's get back to this podcast. All right, the founder of Zumper. It's been around for 7 years, raised a bunch of money. What'd you raise, 50 million so far?
90 so far.
90 so far.
90
Look
so
at
far,
you.
yeah.
200 employees.
200 employees.
Raised 90. Revenue, break even or close to it?
Not yet break even.
How do you think about that in the age of Masayoshi-san breaking, either breaking or making Silicon Valley in this last inning?
If you know your unit economics, SoftBank money makes a lot of sense. If you're ready to roll, if you know your numbers, go for it. If you're not quite sure you've hit product market fit or your classic unit economics, it's as you know, it's risky to bet that much cash before you know the numbers. Yeah,
I mean, we saw Brandless shut down this week. I had Tina Sharkey on the podcast. I love that idea. Do you remember that idea?
No, I do. I love the
There's
concept.
A company called Public Goods. Mm-hmm. Did we have them on the podcast? Public Goods? I can't remember. But that was like the competitor, the small, low-funded competitor. Yeah. I think they're doing pretty solid. I love this
Concept's
idea.
Great. Yeah.
What do you love about the concept of like Brandless and Public Goods and all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think their play was that there's this middle ground between like super kind of cheap stuff in like dollar stores and like really high-end brands. And their point was there's a millennial class that it's kind of contrarian, isn't like brand loyal, but wants like high-quality goods that are reliable. I think that segment exists. There was a lot of press about Brandless that it doesn't exist. I think it does.
Oh, it does.
It absolutely does. I think it was, I don't know enough about the company.
We loved it in our house. I ordered it 3 times. And it was fantastic because they were like, here's a bunch of candy. Here's a bunch of like goldfish. Here's a bunch of cereal. And they had looked and they said, listen, we're going to make it for people who care about the ingredients, who are kind of Whole Foods, good eggs kind of customers, gourmand / care about the ingredients, care about how they're sourced, care about cruelty-free, whatever. And then you get this box and it's all beautifully packaged.
Yeah.
And so when you open your cupboard, everything has no logos on it.
Good.
And it just looks nice and clean, and everything's kind of stocked. It's like kind of this Gattaca. I like it on an aesthetic basis.
Yeah, sure.
Of like an aesthetic and not thinking. Like Uniqlo, I don't know if you know that brand for clothes. Sure. Like that's really big with millennials. There's no logo. Yep, you just buy your t-shirts.
Totally.
Such a great idea.
The play's good. You see why SoftBank did it. I had a lot of respect. I remember that deal, like, because no one was that familiar with Brandless when the deal was done. But the concept's fantastic. Someone will nail it.
And they were going to put 200 in. They did it in 2 tranches, 100 million, then 100 million. And I guess they blew through the 100. Things weren't going the way they wanted. And then they pulled the second 100.
Yeah.
Which there's 2 sides to every story, or 3 or 4 probably. Rashomon. So I think that they probably, didn't like what they saw. But to your point about unit economics, if you're Uber and you know your unit economics and you can just tweak them anytime you want, like this idiot press right now, the press is so dumb. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like they're literally, not all of them, don't at me on Twitter, but it's amazing to me that the press is like, Uber lost 33 cents a ride. They lost 52 cents a ride on 1.7 billion rides. Ask yourself, if you had to pay 40 cents more or 60 cents more, wouldn't you do that? Or would you then go try to hail a cab or take the bus? Of course, you're not changing your behavior.
Yeah.
And what does Dara do? He's like, yeah, okay, you don't want us to grow at the highest possible rate? Okay, yeah, well, we can change the prices. And we can get out of markets that aren't profitable. We can stop investing in markets and we can stop the discounts. And what happens? All of a sudden, it's like, oh, we'll be profitable in 8 quarters, 6 quarters, 4 quarters, 3 quarters, like, and then the stock pops. It's so ridiculous.
There was an interesting comparison you probably saw yesterday, I think, between like Airbnb and Uber's like EBITDA in like 2 years' time that's now forecast, where like Airbnb, which is such a unique kind of once in a generation company, is
unbelievable.
And it would be unbelievable in 2 years if Uber had better EBITDA margins or unit economics.
No,
it's almost
why? Why would it be unbelievable?
Just because I think Uber's play was, low contribution margins, but the volume is insane. Whereas Airbnb kind of had a bit of both, where they had amazing contribution margins and amazing scale.
Yeah. But people don't go on vacation every day.
True.
They do Uber every day.
Yep. True.
So, or if you Uber 20 days a month, you're talking about somebody might do, what is the average? I wonder what their target segment of Ubers, how many rides they actually do a year? 200?
Per person.
Per person. 300?
That's easily conceivable. At least like 1 a working day. Easily.
So let's just put it at 250. Yeah. And then what's the Airbnb average consumer do? 3 transactions a year?
Yep.
So if it was 2 or 3 nights each, it's 10 transactions. Yep. But do you know why this is happening? That Airbnb's margin's going down and Uber's is going up. Do you know why?
I can think of 1,000 answers.
Well, what do you think? What do you think they're doing in the boardroom at Airbnb right now that would cause that to happen?
Well,
and because the IPO is coming.
I mean, I
have my theory. I want to hear yours.
I think with the IPO, they've had to put in a bunch of stuff that maybe slowed some of the spectacular growth. I think if they'd gone out, I don't know. I think if they'd gone out like earlier when like there were more kind of people going out, I think they could have taken probably some wilder swings. They're doing a lot of stuff, rightly so, on like trust and safety right now on Airbnb.
Yeah. The
regulators have come in. It's harder to grow supply. And I think then in the meantime, Booking's gone at them and Booking is now...
Oh, so you think it's the headwinds. This is an interesting theory.
It is a bit of both.
A little bit of headwinds. They got to slow down, make it safer. And if they get rid of the party house concept, maybe that's... I think parties at Airbnbs might be 5% of Airbnbs in my mind. I don't know what you think, but I put, having run an Airbnb, I think it's about 1 out of 20 customers, 1 out of 15.
Actually, that's been my use, is like you go on like a reunion or something.
Exactly. So now when does a reunion tip over into a party?
Yep.
So at ours, we're like 10 is the maximum number of guests. We tell it to people 3 times and we tell them there's a camera at the front of the house that alerts us every time people show up. If it goes past this number... we're going to send somebody over and the neighbors are going to call the cops, so don't do it. I think what's happening at Airbnb is the headwinds are certainly something, but I don't think it's enough to slow it down. I think what happened was probably growth as they hit the natural audience. They might have started to have the growth rate slow. So then they said, wait a second, if we go public with the growth, what would you rather do? Have the growth rate be slower, so you were growing at 30% a year, whatever, 40% year over year, and now you're down to 30%. Would you rather take that hit or the margin hit? And I think a gambler would make the bet that we want to have top line growth to tell people, hey, we can always work on the bottom line.
For sure. We're growing share.
We're growing share. It's a huge market. But then Google and Lyft came out and they said, well, this is a road to nowhere. Prove to us that this, because all the press is saying this can never be a real business. And this is where I'm so upset at the press, because I was part of the tech press, I was an entrepreneur, and now I'm an investor. I did all three effing jobs. And I can tell you, having done all three, the founder has 100% data. The press has 7% of the data. And the investors have, 75 in the companies? Your investors know 75% of what's going on? 60, 80?
Yeah, they should know the salient stuff. And
they know the important stuff.
They don't need to know the small stuff.
They're not in the company every day, so they don't know everything. So you just think about information arbitrage or whatever. The journalists know the least, but they're impacting the market in some ways the most. So these idiots, Professor Galloway or whatever that dipshit, no skin in the game Galloway has to say, he's out there spouting off that Uber's not a real business. It's like, you're an idiot. What a moron. 1.7 billion people are using this. And then he was the same idiot who was like, Tesla's not a real business until they sell 1 million cars. There's a reason why Professor Galloway is a professor and not an entrepreneur anymore. Because he doesn't know what he's talking about. And he's just trying to say outlandish bullshit to try to get clicks and get more sponsors for his podcast. But the journalists don't know what they're talking about anymore. It's bonkers.
Are you long Airbnb? Because I think.
Oh my God!
I think they're going to have. I think it's going to work. I think everything's going to be good.
Of course, it's going to work. It's totally changed the behavior of everybody in the market. With the only exception being very affluent people who don't care about money and are old. Because I know affluent young people who are like, I can stay at the Four Seasons. I can stay at the Ritz-Carlton. I can stay at the Amman Hotel. I prefer an Airbnb because it's the same price, $1,500 a night as the Amman Hotel, or $800 a night, the same price as the St. Regis or Ritz-Carlton. But I get a kitchen and a living room and a backyard. And I like it better.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a fundamental shift. And when these old people die, who are too scared to be in an Airbnb because they think they're going to get murdered or there's going to be hidden cameras, when those people die, Airbnb is just going to go through the roof. Because these people who are the oldsters, they may never get to it. They may never have the courage to try it. They may be set in their ways. They may have mileage points for Bonvoy or whatever it is. I am so
Watch
long
out,
Airbnb.
Jason. So do I. I have legacy mileage points from Bonvoy as well.
How many? What do you got? What do you got?
I have a million.
Well, hold on. You want... Oh.
No, you're going to have more than me. You're going to have way more.
You compare a little bit here. You have 1 million what?
No, maximum 1 million. And this is from very old school SPG credit cards.
That's what I have. I have all my SPG points. Let's flop it. Hold on. I'm going on my Bonvoy app here.
I'm glad I didn't make a bet here, Jason, because I'm going to lose heavily. No, I'm
checking my Bonvoy
800,000.
800,000?
Yeah.
All right. That's legit. It's legit. Hold on. What's Jason? What does this say? Up top. Tiny font.
Holy shit. Okay, 1.25 mil. All
1.25 mil.
Jason's taking us all
for
that
a
afterwards.
month.
There we go. That's right.
I'm going...
Where are you going, Jason?
To Santorini for the month.
One night in Santorini. Santorini's expensive these days.
What is 40,000 a night?
It's ridiculous. I was looking at my wife last summer holiday. I think it's $1,000 for a semi-good hotel a night now.
Really?
In Santorini, yeah.
I'd rather go to Spetses or something where the Greeks go.
Yeah.
Have you been to Spetses?
I have not. I'm the fakest Greek. I grew up in London, have the long Greek name.
I'm 25% Greek.
Yeah,
I feel 150% Greek in my heart.
I see from these cups. The one thing I'll say about Airbnb also, I'm curious to hear your take if there's time, is I think the supply shift is going to be really interesting on Airbnb. They were founded by peer-to-peer and unique people selling to unique people. The property managers are huge on Airbnb. And the question for me, and I'm long Airbnb, I think they're going to be great, is those property managers, are they loyal to Airbnb or do they also post on HomeAway, on VRBO, yada, yada?
They do both. Yeah. 100%. And I do both. Majority of the traffic is on Airbnb.
Yep.
And the Airbnb guests are better.
Yep.
The VRBO guests are generally we've only had 3 or 4 issues in the history of doing it for close to a year now, I think, or maybe over 6 months. And the issue with the VRBO people is they call and they're like, I don't know how Apple TV and a Nest work. I kid you not. And I'm literally sending an assistant over there to show them how Nest works or saying, just text us and we'll change the temperature for you remotely.
Yeah.
They literally don't know how Apple TV works. They're like, you don't have cable? It's like, nobody has cable. You can put your Netflix in. You can just authenticate. I don't know my password. It's like, oh my God. So I just think that's the difference. VRBO is like old school, old people, don't know how to do anything. And the Airbnb are just like tight. That company is... No, I don't think it can get dislodged because you know what? Also, their take rate is so reasonable.
Yeah, it's not actually as much as you think. Yeah.
It's reasonable.
Don't they average in the teens?
Something like that. I mean, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, if they're... I mean, the App Store takes 30%.
Yeah, sure.
If you're taking anything under 30%, I think you're good. And to route around it, for us, what we try to do is get reviews. So we leave like a little gift basket, and then we send them a text message on the way in with, here are our top 5 restaurants in the area and links to them. And if you need anything, let us know. Here's the top places to order from. So we give them almost like a little air of a little bit of like a concierge type experience. And then we always let them come early or stay late.
Awesome.
No matter, I mean, unless you have a guest, but we're just very like super nice to them. And then we just write them like 3 times. Hey, didn't see your review. If you could give us a review, that's really meaningful to us. And they write these amazing reviews. And then your house just goes crazy. Once you get past like 10 reviews, boom, instant book, instant book, instant book.
Awesome.
But you need to have the right house or the right apartment, because if in this Bay Area, it doesn't work in the Bay Area really because the houses are too expensive. So you get a $3 million house. The carrying cost on that is 7% of the house is $200K. It means you got to be making like $15K to break even a month. That means you're going to be charging $500 a night. It's kind of hard.
Yeah, it's real.
It's real. I think it's way too hard. I think it's like certain towns, like college towns, visitor towns.
Oh, you go to Scottsdale, Airbnb is like the way. Oh, it's wonderful.
You have any?
No,
friends who operate
not personally, but yeah, like reunions when you go to Scottsdale because they're quite commoditized. The housing there, and the houses are amazing, and they're made for weekends away.
What is it doing to the rental market? Is that one of the reasons why rents have gone up? Is that the Airbnb market, people doing that, is taking inventory out?
So it's definitely taking inventory out, and I think they're being very careful with not being seen to do that and not doing it. So they're doing it. They're doing it a little bit.
How can they ever even claim that they're not doing it?
So it is happening from long-term apartment rentals for sure. But in the grand scheme of like what's happened to our city, sitting here in San Francisco with you, and we're in Soma. What's happening here is like, I mean, it's zoning. It's such a boring answer, but like I'll give you an example.
Thanks for doxing me, Drew.
Yeah. I
now people know I'm in Soma. Founders in Soma looking for me.
Lock the doors. Yeah. My wife and I have a place in a dog patch that we rent out. Long-term apartment rentals.
Yeah.
Lovely place near the new Chase Center in the dog patch.
Yeah.
I want there to be massive development. I don't care what happens to my property value. It'll be fine. Like, they need to build there. They've capped building in the dog patch at 4 stories high.
It's so dumb.
It makes no sense.
San Francisco is so dumb.
It makes no sense.
When I'm mayor, mayorjason.com, I am going to tell every developer, if you pay 10 years of taxes in advance this year, we will let you grow your building 3 times bigger than whatever the regulation is now. So 4 is now 12. But you got to go get some goddamn financing.
Yep.
And you got to pay me 10 years worth of taxes today. Then I'm going to take all that money, put it in escrow to build better goddamn transportation and finish this fakaka BART system, which they need to rip out and start over because they use their own custom-sized trains. We need to use the standard trains from Europe and Japan and build a proper subway. Yep. What do you think of my plan? Would I get your vote if I said, we're going high, there's going to be some shadows, some parks, not going to have the same amount of sun, but we're going to get all that tax revenue in advance to build a proper BART system that goes everywhere?
The barriers to going high, the arguments are pretty weak. If you look at what's blocking the thing, it's
shade.
It's one of 2 things. It's local associations who are protecting home values, or it's the politics between San Francisco and Sacramento where cities don't want to be dictated to by like the government of California. It is, Mayor Breed said like interesting stuff. I want her to be right. Like rent control, if you take that, was so well intended. Like rent control's intention was amazing. It was to protect us as consumers and as renters. And it, combined with zoning laws and some of the other things going on, it has also led to the state we're in, where there's just no new supply on market and no one's moving, and we can't build enough supply. I mean, we're building like a quarter of the supply that there is demand.
All right, let's go through the actual rental report when we get back after this last break. And also, I didn't get the answer on what you think of these clubs and We Live and micro apartments when we get back on This Week in Startups. Do you know it costs at least 5 times as much to acquire a new customer as it does to keep an existing one? Your existing clients are your best new clients. Don't lose them. And a startup, especially ones in the SaaS space, that's software as a service, enterprise they call it sometimes as well, building relationships with your customers is everything. And without having those rabid, raving fans, those net promoter score 9s and 10s who are advocates for you, your business does not stand a chance, because other people have curated and built those deep relationships to have advocates in the market selling your product when you're asleep or working on something else. But you can't earn raving fans with basic software that treats customers like a ticket. They don't want to be a ticket. They want to be an individual. Help Scout was created to fix that problem. It's a customer service platform designed with your customers in mind. No ticket numbers or robo emails, just conversations with real people. Their all-in-one product includes shared inboxes for email, built-in live chat, and a help center for self-service content, which can be embedded on your website in just minutes. As your business scales from 100 to 10,000 to 1 million customers, Help Scout grows with you and leaves customers with a delightful human experience. Over 10,000 of the world's most customer-centric businesses like Basecamp, Trello, Figma, Superhuman, and Zapier are using Help Scout to talk with their customers and build that deep bond and turn them into superfans. Eligible startups under $1 million in funding, less than 2 years old, can access everything Help Scout has to offer for only $50 a month. For your first year, visit helpscout.com/twist to learn more. That's helpscout.com/twist to get started today. And thanks to my friends at Help Scout for supporting independent media like This Week in Startups. It means a lot to the fans of this show and to me and my team. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. All right, Anthemos Georgiades is here with us. He is the CEO and co-founder of Zumper. You got Andreessen Horowitz, I just found out, as an investor.
They were a very small seed investor.
Very small seed investor.
Jeff Jordan and Andreessen.
Ben Horowitz is listening to the live stream. I just texted me, said he wants to call in and ask you a question, so we'll do that at the end. What do you think of all this live work, we live ideas? I really thought that this could be something with micro apartments. I got obsessed with it. Micro homes. I was looking for an investment. We wound up investing in Blockable.com, which builds modular housing in factories, slightly different than micro apartments or these ADUs, accessibility dwelling units or whatever. What impact are those going to have in the future on cities? And do you think those are a good thing for us to pursue with this housing crisis? Micro apartments, we live, clubs?
Yeah, great question. In supply constrained cities like San Francisco, New York, Austin, yeah, I see it. Like I've helped a couple of investors who've looked at opportunities here, and like there's definitely demand, and there's an arbitrage play, right? Just like master lease something, chop it into smaller bits, and lease it again to kind of people renting.
Yeah.
Do I think it will work in the rest of America, which isn't supply constrained? Because most US rental markets or real estate markets are kind of one for one. There's no crazy imbalance of demand and supply. We just happen to live in a crazy imbalanced city. Unclear. Maybe. Millennials are still, to your earlier question, highly footloose, don't even necessarily want to commit to a 12-month lease, let alone anything longer. So I'm kind of long on it in the first 10 cities that they've all focused on in the We Lives and the Commons. Totally buy it. The biggest challenge for them, I think, will be, does this work in Lansing, Michigan? Or does it need to work in like smaller cities? Or is there enough supply where you can have your own place?
The reason I think is interesting is if you think about low-cost value products like Lyft, Line, or Uber Pool, and just saving money and being frugal, in order to have, for the millennials and these Gen Zs who really value lifestyle, part of having this epic lifestyle is not having a big burn rate.
Yep.
So in a place like San Francisco, micro apartments, or Manhattan, New York, or Hong Kong, a micro apartment, which I think is 150 square feet to 250 square feet.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
350, I think, was the limit in New York, that you weren't allowed to build less than that because they didn't want families living in under 350 square feet. But they didn't realize that there would be single people all over the place. So the reason to have that here would be somebody could pay $2,000 instead of, what is the average rent in San Francisco now?
$3,700 for
now,
one bed.
Is that number legit, or does that include like these $5,000 high-end apartments that skew it?
So Zumper has pretty much every listing in San Francisco. To be clear, these are vacant listings being advertised on Zumper right now. So this is not saying your neighbor who's been in their apartment for 7 years is paying $3,700. The last report, it came down a little.
To $3,520. New York is $3,000. Boston, $2,500. San Jose, $2,400. Los Angeles, $2,200. Los Angeles seems high to me. And San Diego, $1,750 for a one-bedroom.
Yeah, San Francisco's been above New York for several years now. It's actually narrowing a little, but there's no signs that anything's gonna flop.
The difference here is in New York, that's New York, New York.
5 boroughs.
5 boroughs.
Yep.
Now, here's the thing. If you live in New York and you live out in Flatbush or Crown Heights, that number is not 3,000. It's
correct.
1,400?
1,500. Yeah, this is very bimodal. This is a very bimodal average. You've got a bunch of people in Manhattan paying $5,500 and a bunch of people in Queens paying $2,000.
Right. And they can each use the city equally.
Yep, correct.
Because of
transportation.
Yeah. And that's what's missing here is I lived on the last stop, Bay Ridge, Brooklyn.
Yep.
But I could go to Manhattan. It just took me 20 or 30 more minutes. But same train that the people on the Upper East Side took.
Yeah.
So I had to suffer like an extra 30 minutes. Boo-hoo for me as a young person. I didn't care. Still part of it. Once I got to the Limelight, once I got to the Palladium, once I got to Manhattan, the Roxy, the Tunnel, all these great clubs back in the day, it didn't matter to me if it took me 20 more minutes and I was in the club. Like, it was lit.
Yeah. You didn't remember on the way back.
Fuck, I care if it took me 20 extra minutes on the subway. And you know what? I took the subway home at 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. We would go to Florent and get a steak frites.
It's safe as well. I lived in New York as well. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not dumb. I mean, if it's
you don't
after midnight, go to the middle car where the conductor is. Or the first car where the conductor is. That's all, if you're alone. Now, if you had micro apartments, what would they be in each of these top cities, you think, as a percentage of cost? What do you think they would actually cost to do? Because the average apartment is 500, 600, 700 square feet? 800?
Yeah, sure.
What's a one bedroom? 900?
Yeah, 800, 900, yeah.
So you could probably get that down. You could probably have 2 micro. Is that right? 2 for 1, you think?
Yeah, roughly. I mean, there are people in San Francisco, to use us as an example, against the $3,520 you'll pay if you take a one bedroom. There are people in co-living spaces paying just over $1,000.
What?
Yeah.
So that goes back to my other question I wanted to talk to you about. Explain what's happening in co-living, legally, illegally. What have you seen? Don't rat anybody out.
No, yeah, sure. I think the jury's out. I think the 2 trends I've seen, and some of these people use Zumper to generate demand for co-living. I think we see large consumer demand. If I was a VC, and I haven't seen any of their decks, but I think I've seen unproven economics, long-term liabilities.
What does that mean, long-term liabilities?
Landlords aren't like willingly just like giving up their spaces for this kind of risky thing. There's a bit of capex. You've got a whole bunch of kids moving in. So a lot of these companies, I think WeLive was doing this very early, taking master leases on like buildings. So you're taking like tens of millions of dollars per building sometimes of liability on your balance sheet because you're promising them like 10-year leases. I don't know if that's like how I'd sleep well at night. Now, it's a great business model for some.
I don't think it's a great business model because even if you had like a 6-bedroom mansion in the suburbs and you're renting it for $12,000 and you can fit 6 people in it, it's $2,000 a person. You're living in a mansion, you get a backyard and a pool. That's kind of cool. But there's no profit there. So I don't think it's profitable as a business in and of itself. But maybe micro apartments at scale, if you were building or renovating buildings, that could work.
That could work. And I think that's the key point is you kind of got to design it for like exactly the community you want to build. But look at hotels. Like when I stay in Manhattan now to go to our Zumper's New York office, I stay in like a hotel I think called the Arlo, where basically the rooms are tiny.
You can touch the wall
I don't care.
From your bed.
Exactly. And it's not even that cheap, sadly, but it's like cheaper than like the ridiculous
$300 or $400 instead of $800.
Correct.
I got the tip.
The one in Tribeca, right?
Yeah. I when I was, on a budget, I was doing that. But you can afford to stay at the Ace Hotel. Yeah. Pretty easy. And those are bigger rooms, funky.
Yep.
And then I like the Beekman. Have you stayed at Beekman?
I've stayed at the Ace. I've never stayed at the Beekman.
You're ready for the Beekman. You're on the Series CD. You can go Beekman. Beekman's going to be like $600 a night. The rooms are gigantic. Great restaurants downstairs. Great lobby. You treat yourself.
Cool.
It's an extra $200 or $300 a night for you. You go for 5 nights. You spend the extra $1,500. You feel like $1 million walking out of the place. You got to have that swagger.
Yeah.
You can't be staying at a real, like when you're grinding it, yes. But you're going into big meetings now.
Yep.
I'm going to a big meeting, I'm taking Uber Black.
You're taking Uber Black.
If I'm going to an important meeting, I got to show up in an Uber Black. Gets me in the right mindset.
Cool.
You know what I'm saying?
What did you take to this meeting, Jason? What did you take?
I self-drove my Model 3.
I took my Uber X. It was good.
You Uber X'd it. I Uber X most times. I Uber X when I was at Park City.
Yep.
I had the craziest experience. For some reason, I thought Park City would be better to have an SUV and a four-wheel drive one because I was in Park City and I was like, I've been there when it gets snowed out.
Yeah.
You can't, it's hard to get taxis and all that stuff, but I know Uber's there, and they probably have snow tires, but I just want to have my own car in case I have to zip around to different mountains or whatever. I was there for like a couple of days. I get to the Hertz counter and the guy's like, oh, you have SUV? I was like, yeah, I got an SUV. He's like, which one do you want? You want this one? And I got a Wrangler. It's really great. I was like, I never drove a Wrangler. Yeah, I'll take the Wrangler. Then he's like going through my bill. And he goes, okay, Wrangler. Okay, yeah. And then there's like $100 upcharge for the Wrangler. I said, wait, hold on. 5 minutes ago, you said pick which one you want. I picked that one. You told me I had an SUV. I picked an SUV. He's like, yeah. I was like, but you're charging me $100 extra, so my $275 bill's now $400? He's like, well, yeah, that's how we're trained to do it. I was like, give me the manager. And I was like, oh my God, I'm that guy asking for the manager. And I said, I just want to be clear, and I don't mean to get you in trouble, but is in fact the policy to not tell people about the upcharge until 5 minutes later? Yeah. He goes, yes, that's our policy. I was like, do you realize how dishonest that policy is? Somebody clipped this and mentioned to the Hertz CEO and Hertz support, you guys are hated for a goddamn reason because of these stupid shenanigans like fill up the gas. Are you going to fill up the gas or are we going to charge you $8 a gallon? This is why you're hated. And this price gouging stupidity of upselling me, but not telling me it's an upsell, and bait and switching me and then charge. And they really went by the 100 real fast. He's like, okay, so this is insurance, this is this, you decline this, and the $100 for the upgrade and the gas. And I was like, whoa, hold on, rewind a second.
2020, still happening.
Still happening.
What happened?
Hertz is still a horrible company that needs to burn to the ground. And so I said to the guy, I said, on principle, I said, $100 does not matter to me, and I actually really want to drive a Wrangler, because I'm thinking about getting one. I said, on principle, I'm ordering an Uber right now, and I'm going to rip up my reservation. He goes, I understand. He goes, we get this a lot. I was like, okay, so if you work at Hertz, somebody please clip this, a fan of the show, and just troll Hertz with this clip. Your company is going to die because of these shenanigans. It's just horrible behavior on these parts.
What happened to Zipcar? I know what happened to them, but what happened to just the dream of, I think that we were promised, get to an airport, walk 3 minutes, open a Zipcar, bounce. And
I did it. I did Silvercar one time.
Oh, that's right.
Silvercar was great.
It's still going?
It's still going. And I did it one time in LA because I was like, I wanted to try an Audi. I'd never driven an Audi either. I like cars.
Yeah, sure.
And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be here for like a week and I'm going to be driving everywhere. I was going back and forth to Malibu, in fact. And I was like, it's just a pain in the neck I get car sick in Ubers. I get car sick in the back seat or even the front seat. If I'm driving, I like to drive. So I was like, let me get an Audi convertible, see what that's about. And I tried Silvercar. They're off the airport.
Yep.
You get there, your car's sitting there.
And they're good
you
cars,
order an
right?
app.
Yeah.
They're beautiful Audis, brand new. You don't have to talk to anybody, which is the key. And you know what you're paying, which is the key. Silvercar needs to destroy Hertz. And it would be, the only thing better would be is if they just charge you $50 extra to come pick you up like an Uber.
Yep.
And I would have.
That's a great idea.
That was what I would have done. I would have been like, instead of $100 a day, because I think they just charge you $120 a day or $100 straight. Insurance is all in it. Gas is all in it.
How are we not there? That should be commonplace. I agree.
It's just like the abuse of the customer. The only companies that abuse customers are old ones where you have hired CEOs who aren't the founders, who are scared of losing their job. So they maximize profits instead of maximizing joy and being leaders. Because if you're a hired CEO, you're on a contract, and the contract lasts X years. You don't have founder authority. So you think that these little micro apartments are going to become a thing? What's the worst thing you've seen with these people living in group settings legally or whatever?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there were a couple of press articles about like just gigantic social issues, because at the end of the day, you're putting a bunch of, and take San Francisco, you're putting a bunch of often very well-educated, anxious people in a house together. And it's kind of a recipe. I think there've been a couple of like huge divides and like packs of cliques going around them. I've had a couple of incidental stories. It's not what you might expect from putting a bunch of millennials together, but I think.
And then who's on the lease? Does one person take the responsibility for the lease, and then they live for free by subletting?
I think the
people?
startups on the lease. The startups are on the lease, and then they're kind of subletting their lease or subdividing their lease.
But they're not even telling the landlord, I bet.
I don't know, but
they're probably not.
There's a play. It's a hard execution, but someone will figure it out and build a really valuable business. I don't know, to your point, if it's the CapEx side or it's the operational side, or you need to do both. And in WeLive, I just haven't,
who knows what's happening?
I haven't heard anything about it in the most recent months, and hard to know if that's going to be of any focus as they try and put it back.
Let's get back to San Francisco specifically as we wrap up here, but what is San Francisco's destiny at this point? Because it does seem like it backed off. Remote work now is letting people stay home. So a lot of people are downsizing their office space because it got too expensive. They're letting people work from home. The super commuting phenomenon is there, but I think people are starting to work 3 or 4 days in the office, or 2, 3, 4 days in the office, 2, 3, 4 days at home. And that's an adaptation to how bad it is. Is there any solution for this city to do what like Houston or Seattle did, where they added a large number of units, do you think? Or is it just too broke to fix?
So I'll give you a kind of a split answer.
Am I right about Seattle and Houston figured it out? They added a ton of units?
Correct, and they've been very quick to do it as well.
Yeah. How did they do it? Do you know?
I think that their zoning has been it's just not an issue in the way it's a micro issue here, because here you have to get like micro support for zoning changes.
And there's no reason to do that if you're...
Texas is more like broad brush, and if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. We're going to take a macro approach, and like everyone will benefit.
I understand.
I'm a British immigrant to San Francisco. I love the city, and I'm like long on it. My core team in Zumper will always be in San Francisco. It's impossible to imagine we're going to build our company in San Francisco. The core team will always be here. We already have far more people.
Will they?
The core team, I think, will be here for this one. I think we'll finish the job for Zumper in San Francisco. Our Scottsdale office will have more people than our San Francisco office, probably by the end of this year.
Of course.
And we have a great office in Rhode Island. We have a great office in Chicago, in New York. We have remote folks on the sales team. I never used to say that. I loved hunkering down, having the team together. It's implausible to think our next 100 hires are going to come in the Bay Area. It's not just the cost. It's not just the fact that the big Googles and Facebooks are going to hoover up all the office space. It's also the talent. Like, there is real talent outside San Francisco, but all of us here are so cocky and think that just because we moved to Silicon Valley, all of us included, that, this is where all the brains are. Oh my goodness, go talk to someone in Scottsdale or Rhode Island who hasn't had the opportunity to work in a Silicon Valley startup and now does. They're so smart and they care so much.
They're getting the best of both worlds.
Yep.
They're getting the equity in a company that's high growth in a place where $1 trillion, $100 billion companies are made. There's no $1 trillion companies, $100 billion companies, with the exception of Microsoft and Amazon, two very notable exceptions outside of this area. So it's very hard to do, but I think people are starting to realize, wait a second, what is the point of making $150,000 a year being an engineer if I have to pay $80,000 in rent, or I can't ever buy a home? Whereas if I made $125,000 living in Nashville or Rhode Island, in Rhode Island, getting paid a Silicon Valley City salary to live in Rhode Island, you're going to be like the mayor.
Our second engineering office is in Providence, Rhode Island.
Brilliant.
How awesome
Delightful
is that?
place to live.
It's amazing. The quality of life is amazing, and they're
You're telling me you haven't thought about with the crime, homeless issue / addiction issue, because I think framing it as a homeless or poverty issue is maybe not accurate, because according to the report I read, and some people won't say this publicly, but a number of people who are very high up said to me, Jason, I'll just leave it at that, this actually isn't a homeless or a poverty issue. It's an addiction and a mental health crisis, not a poverty issue, but people are looking at it as a poverty issue because it has in the past been a poverty issue. People were homeless because they didn't have the money for a home. Now people are homeless. Ostensibly, they don't have money for a home, but if 70% of them are addicted to drugs or suffering from mental illness, which is what the report said in San Francisco, well, maybe if they could solve the addiction or the mental health, they actually wouldn't be homeless, because it's not poverty that's the problem. It's the mental illness that's the problem, and the self-medicating that's the problem. So we're framing it as homeless. You yourself haven't thought, do I even want to be in this high-tech state anymore? You haven't considered Austin, Miami, Nevada, be on Lake Tahoe and not paying state tax and not doing this? You didn't think about pulling the ripcord?
So it's a good question. So no, like I have a 2-year-old kid, my wife's here, and I love the city. And I think like you and I and your listeners and so many people being here and helping solve the problem and trying to get the right people elected and donating to solve the problem, I think is good, because if a bunch of the brain power left the problem behind, I think that doesn't solve, we're not going to help anyone. There are some cool charities here like Miracle Messages. I don't know if you've ever come across Kevin. They do some amazing stuff using videos to reunite homeless people with their families in like different states.
What is that called?
Called Miracle Messages. Check it out. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
There's some really modern approaches.
So wait. They make a video of the homeless person. They find the people who are in their original circle who might be able to support them and say, here's a video of your friend Jason who hit hard times. And then that might inspire them to intervene.
That's it. So
bring them home.
We, my wife and I have donated to it, and we
Miracle
Messages.
This is brilliant.
And we donate Zumper's time every quarter to literally going onto Market Street, and it's done with class, because I think sometimes the idea of a videographer from a tech background going out,
it's easy to be cynical about,
and like that could be a disaster, but they do this with grace. It's only opted in, and so they basically find people who say came from Michigan originally who are now living on the streets for whatever reason, and then they have a team of volunteers, including Zumper members, who I'm so proud of, who will then go onto that Lansing, Michigan Facebook page, post the video, and find someone who's related to them. Now, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes there's no.
It only has to work 1 out of 10 times to make it worthwhile.
Correct. And
the video takes $500 to make.
That's it. I think they just crossed 200 reunions, and it is an amazing thing. So I think tech.
Do they videotape the reunion?
They do.
Oh,
you got to check it out. Miracle Messages. It's actually tear-jerking. It's amazing.
That to me, you know what video gets me? When the soldier comes home.
Yep.
And they come home early.
Yep.
And then they show up at their kid's soccer game.
No, it's insane.
You ever see those? Or they're at the airport?
It's insane. As a Brit who's not used to these, it's like
I cry every time.
It gets you every time.
Oh, you're a Brit. You have no emotion, is what you're saying? I know. I work with Sir Charles. Trust me, I know about it.
Bury them deep down.
Very deep. Stiff upper lip.
Stiff upper lip. Exactly.
That's the way they do it. Charles, I haven't seen the guy cry yet.
So basically, I love San Francisco. I think we should solve the issues from here. For my next startup, would I do it in San Francisco or elsewhere? Don't know.
Coin toss. 50-50 you would. You might think LA, right?
LA's
the
tech
so
scene
dope.
in LA has. I like being the underdog.
I wish I was in LA.
There's an underdog vibe in LA where you go there and people hear you work in tech and they think you're an idiot. They're like, "Why would you work?"
I spent 10 years there. I loved it.
It's kind of getting there.
It's the best lifestyle. No, it's there. It's there.
I'm excited about what's going on.
I might pull the ripcord at some point and go back. If I had the TV show right now.
Yep.
I would have done it. I had a TV pilot with NBC, didn't get on air, thank God, because the producer was Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a bit of a problem. Thank God. Can you imagine?
It's not great.
You want to know the terrible for me, and this is the stupidest, craziest thing. When we did it, my attorneys were negotiating. I had the same attorney as Mark Cuban introduced me to, who does his Shark Tank negotiations. We're doing my negotiations with the Weinstein Company. I never told the story. And they fought to give me a credit for my title card. And then one of my title cards was Harvey Weinstein, Jason Calacanis, executive producer or co-creators or whatever. So on the same card. And they're like, Harvey doesn't share a card and blah, blah, blah. But this is a big deal. He's going to share the card with you as co-creator. And I was like, oh my God, I just think back to it. I was talking to my wife. I was like, can you imagine the show's on the air? Because he did Project Runway too.
Oh yeah.
And I think they took his name off the title cards. But I would live in LA if I had the show going halftime maybe. And then be up here halftime.
There's good stuff. You see it in your, in your incubators. There's great stuff coming out of LA.
Yeah. The Ringer just sold for, I think, $250. And he lives in Manhattan Beach. He's pretty public about that. I'm not doxing him. Did we miss anything? I don't think we missed anything. Miracle Messages. I love that.
Check out Miracle Messages. It is.
I got to get behind that. Hey, producer Nick and Sir Charles, can we just take a memo here? Figure out if this is as legit as Anthemos is saying here, and let's get that person on the pod when we do our, that secret Project X thing we're doing. All right. Hey, quick call from Ben Horowitz. We got him on the line. Can we just dial him up? I texted you his personal number. Just dial up Ben Horowitz. Hold on. He's got something to say. He had a question for you, Anthemos. Hold on.
Hello. You've reached the offices of two-time New York Times best-selling author Ben Horowitz. He's not available right now. Please.
Again, Ben? I just Ben, it's Jason. I'll see you at the Warriors game tomorrow night, but I got your guy on the pod. You said to call you back. All right. You know what? We'll have Ben on next time. We ran out of time. All right.
Send you a question, though, if you want to read it.
Oh, he did send the... Oh, is the question on the text? What's the question? Read it out to me. Oh, here we go. Dear Jason, going to New York soon as the former king of New York. Thank you. What hotel dining recommendations do you have? Love the show. Thanks, Ben Horowitz. I think for Ben, I mean, he's hip. He's, you know... I'm going to go with the Beekman as a hotel. I think it's pretty cool to be downtown. You might want to try some of the hotels, Gansford, whatever, in the meatpacking. And then in terms of food, go to Decoy, which is a Peking duck place in the West Village, and I'll hook you up with the owner. All right, Ben, I'll see you at the Warriors game in the owner's box. All right. Thanks for coming on the pod. Sorry, Ben couldn't get through. We tried to get through to him. And we'll see you all next time. If you're looking to rent, Zumper, Zumper. And if you're looking for a job, Providence, work from home, sales, developers, everything. Hiring for everything. On fire. If you go public, what year would it be?
3 years' time.
3 years' time. All right. Maybe I got to get in on that. Maybe JCal got to get a little slice. All right. We'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.